Wave 2 of Etherfields has recently landed on my doorstep, and in this video we'll take an in-depth look at what to expect from the Etherfields 2.0 envelope, which will be sent to all backers. As a habitual late backer, my entire pledge arrived in a single delivery, and holy crap, that is a lot of content. I realise that it's modest by YouTuber standards, but it still felt to me like pushing the boat out. As I record this, the majority of Wave 2 containers are still stuck in China due to COVID restrictions, and my sympathies go out to those of you still awaiting delivery. If it's any consolation, the cost of shipping large board games all the way to New Zealand would probably make your hair curl, unless you happen to live in the mythical far-off land of Rest of World. Now, the main purpose of this video is to look into the Etherfields 2.0 envelope, which includes 5 different options for enhancing or modifying your game. The first thing I'll point out is that none of these are bug fixes or errata. Although a couple of the enhancements are highly recommended, all 5 are still optional. So massive credit to Awaken Realms for making Etherfields 1.0 as highly polished as it is, and then giving us all these 2.0 enhancements for free to make it even better. This white leaflet may not look fancy, but it contains various rules which you'll want to refer back to, so don't throw it away. The 5 options are listed from most highly recommended through to most optional, so we'll cover them in that order. The first option is a surprisingly significant overhaul of the Dreamworld Map. This edition replaces the old Dreamworld Map. It allows players to focus much more on what is the core gameplay experience of Etherfields, and shortens the time you'll spend on the Dreamworld Map. We highly recommend using these cards. Okay, so the Dreamworld map goes at the bottom of the board in these 8 spaces, and you even get a couple of card holders for easier teardown and setup. The Etherfields 2.0 envelope contains replacements for all 8 map tiles, so without looking at the front, I'll take the first one. If you've already completed the tutorial dream, then the tile you're replacing will already be on the board, otherwise it's in the core box. After replacing it, you can put the original tile behind the Removed from Game divider, just in case you ever get the urge to replay the campaign using the 1.0 map tiles, for variety. Then replace the other 7 map tiles in the same way. As we'll see in a moment, the new map tiles use slightly different rules to the old ones, so you'll also need to replace the I-01D Wisdom card with the equivalent card from the 2.0 envelope. If you've completed the tutorial, then that will be in the Wisdom card holder, otherwise it's in the core box. Now, if you've never played Etherfields, then the new map is ready to go, and you can skip ahead to the next section. But if you've played any of Etherfields 1.0, and you're interested in knowing what the hell we just changed, then let's take a closer look. Obviously I can't show you the front of the new map tiles due to spoilers, but the starting map tile is actually shown in the rulebook, so it's not a spoiler, and we can do a side-by-side comparison of the differences. Aside from the different layout of locations, you'll also notice that the key icon and the slumber icon are both gone, not just from this tile but from the entire map. To make sense of that, we'll need to take a look at the Wisdom card we replaced a moment ago. It provides a sort of map legend describing the effect of each icon. The key and slumber icons have disappeared because both of those effects have been assimilated by other icons. If your team enters a Dreamgate location on the 2.0 map, you must choose one of 2 alternatives. The first is to enter a dream, if it's valid to do so. Alternatively, if you can't or don't want to enter a dream, then you gain 1 key and resolve the next slumber. This change gives teams a lot more control over their journey across the map, and as you can see, the new map tile has fewer locations and less convoluted pathways. Another rule change to the Dreamworld map concerns shortcuts, which are these thin lines. In Etherfields 1.0, the penalty for taking a shortcut was printed on each map tile, and it would vary depending on the tile. In Etherfields 2.0, the penalty for taking a shortcut is always the same, namely, each dreamer must seal 1 card. This rule is no longer printed on map tiles, but has been moved into the 2.0 game manual. Another minor change makes it possible to acquire a key from a shopping location, so it pays to keep a close eye on that Wisdom card. And that's it for the new Dreamworld map. Next, we'll take a quick look at the new game manual. We highly recommend using the new revised game manual instead of the old one. It will help you dive into your first game more easily. Also, it acts as a great reference if you've already played the game. It also answers some of the questions that the previous manual omitted. The new manual does have some nice improvements. For example, if you're setting up the game for the very first time, you can just follow the steps highlighted in green and ignore the ones in white. And there are countless other improvements to organisation, clarity and phrasing. But for all that, I always thought that the 1.0 game manual was much better than it got credit for, and I still consider it a valuable resource. For example, the board description on page 4 of the original manual is still a terrific overview of what goes where and how the various decks behave. It's worth noting that the new game manual doesn't change any rules other than the Dreamworld Map rules, which we looked at a moment ago. There are some additional clarifications and a very short FAQ, but the rule set itself is essentially the same. Since we're on the topic of streamlining the experience for new players, I highly recommend the web-based app instead of the book of scripts when playing the tutorial dream at the very start of the campaign. Rules are explained, examples are illustrated, and in later dreams the app also corrects a few typos. We've covered the 2 highly recommended updates, so let's look at the optional ones, starting with the Power Nap. Power Nap mode makes the game a little less punishing by allowing you to repeat failed dreams without gathering keys again. We recommend this mode to groups that find the difficulty of some dreams too high, and those who just want to explore the story. Suppose that I've just finished playing a dream, and it ended in failure. If I place the Power Nap card on top of the Dream Gate tile, it will get me into that dream for free when I eventually return. Of course, there's only one Power Nap card, so if I fail another dream before returning, I'll have to choose between leaving the Power Nap card where it is, or moving it to the newly failed dream. Next, we have an optional new way of saving the game, which for reasons I cannot begin to comprehend is called the OOD save system. It seems to me that even if you are keen on adopting this system, it doesn't render the traditional save system obsolete. I consider both save systems to have a valid place, so let's compare and contrast them. At the risk of stating the blindingly obvious, you can completely ignore both save systems until the day your significant other demands their dining room table back and forces you to return everything to the box. Before we look at the OOD system, let's look at the standard rules for saving and restoring the game, which I'll call the traditional system. These rules are described in both game manuals, and the rules are the same for both 1.0 and 2.0. Broadly speaking, saving and restoring a game involves resetting quite a bit of the game state. For example, players will discard all their distress markers and shining gems, unseal all their cards, discard all their progress cards, and so on. Similarly, quite a bit of the game board gets reset too. Decks get shuffled, keys get discarded, and so on. Obviously, this doesn't cause you to lose any of your progress through the overall campaign, since only your short-term state gets reset. It's also worth noting that there's a pretty good reason for doing things this way. Etherfields has a lot of moving parts, and attempting to record every detail of the game state and then restore it at a later date could be an arduous task. But that's exactly what the OOD system does. It's intended for players who prefer to pick up their campaign exactly where they left off in the previous session. The new save system is a different way to play for those who wish for a more streamlined experience. It does not require players to use the Awakening system to save and load the game. Instead, it uses a more widely known component, the save sheet. They provide 4 save sheets which are identical on both sides, giving you 8 saves, which should be more than enough to decide whether you like the system and want to print out more of your own. There's also an OOD tile with step-by-step instructions for saving on one side and loading on the other. No doubt this gets easier with practice, but it's not trivial. For example, you need to separate your influence cards something like this. An illustration would have been nice because the text is a bit confusing, to be honest. It may help you to know that the OOD system doesn't store the state of your discard pile or the cards in your hand. Those all go back into the draw pile. It doesn't say this in the 2.0 rules, but it seems to me that you're free to choose whichever save system you prefer on a case-by-case basis. For example, if the team has just spent several hours building a huge pile of keys, shining gems, progress cards and other goodies, and you need to pack the game away, then the OOD system may be the way to go. In contrast, if the team is about to drown in an ocean of distress markers and sealed cards, then they'll probably want to perform an awakening anyway, and the traditional save system will allow you to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. To put it another way, there's no point recording the exact state of the entire game if your next plan of action is to reset it all anyway. The 5th and final optional rule is continuous dream mode. There's a whole blurb here about who this mode is for, but reading between the lines, I think it's mainly intended for players who really don't like slumbers. I gather that Awaken Realms' preferred method of play is without this option. There's a large tile labelled CDM detailing the rules, but this video has gone on long enough already, so I'll leave you to explore that on your own. Thanks for watching and happy dreaming!